All right, now let's jump into our opening story for today. The Biden administration's border crisis, which has now opened the border to more than 10 million migrants, has turned literally every state into a border state, and unfortunately, tragically, it's led to deadly results in more than one instance. But even as poll after poll reveals that voters consider immigration to be the #1 problem facing our country, the left continues to claim that Republicans have politicized this issue and that, in fact, it's not even an issue worth covering. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Matt Rosendale. He's a member of the House Border Caucus, as well as the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Natural Resources, Congressional District of Montana. Congressman Rosendale, always great to have you. Good to see you.
Great to be with you. Coming live from Glendive, Montana today, Jody.
Beautiful place, beautiful place. Well, we're glad you took time to join us. All right, let's jump into this, Congressman. When you consider how President Biden has literally opened the border to migrants without considering documentation or even background checks for that matter, do you think it's really inevitable that we're going to have outcomes like we saw with Laken Riley earlier this year and other tragic stories like the one coming from Houston and New York this week? Are these type of things inevitable with the current border policy of this administration?
They're not. We've been screaming that this was going to happen. When you were still with us, Jody, we were screaming that this was going to happen. As you just mentioned, we've got it now. We've got the death of Laken Riley, just tragedy down in Georgia. We also see the same kind of thing, a young 13-year-old girl gagged, tied up, and raped in a park. We've got the folks that were in Indiana. They had a 14-year-old daughter who was kidnapped by 5 illegals. They were getting ready to transport her to California. How do you think that that was going to end up? And we've been screaming about how this crime is being transmitted throughout the entire nation. That's why Alejandro Mayorkas, quite frankly, as Secretary of Homeland Security, was the only cabinet member who's ever been impeached. And he was impeached by the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, the Schumer-controlled, the Democrat-controlled United States Senate would not remove him, but the impeachment still did take place. And there was just a mountain of evidence that showed that they have a complete disregard for enforcing the laws and protecting our border.
I don't know if you were able to hear a little bit earlier. I played coming into this MSNBC's, excuse me, Joy Reid and Congresswoman Jayapal. You probably heard that. But they're calling all of this just a bunch of fear-mongering from Republicans. How do you respond to that?
It's unfortunate, and it's really I feel bad for the parents of these children that have been lost, that have been raped, that have been murdered, to listen to the Democrats try to completely minimize not only the crimes that were committed against their children, but the impact that this is having on our nation. This is only the tip of the iceberg, Jody. We know that there's been 20,000 Chinese nationals that have come into our border. And when you start talking about trying to vet these folks when they get to the border and the background checks, they cannot conduct any good vetting or background checks. They're coming from places that there are just no records. The fellow who committed one of these crimes, it was the murder of the woman, allegedly murdered the woman in Maryland. When they picked him up in Oklahoma, also has a charge. They think that he committed a murder in El Salvador about 30 days before he came here, and his DNA is connected to a home invasion in L.A. So all we're doing is collecting data at the border so that when they show up again, we can connect to when they came into our country. But it's very difficult to find out what they did before they came here. And again, this open border with 10 million people that have had encounters with the Border Patrol and another 2 million people that have snuck into our country as gotaways, at least, is creating an invasion within the country that law enforcement and quite frankly, even the military is having a hard time trying to control.
No doubt about that. And you add to that all the potential terrorists who are here. In fact, we know many of them are here. That's why our red light is blinking right now, giving warnings all over the country of potential terror threats. And by the way, the Biden administration responds to all of this with an executive order this week granting amnesty to up to 500,000 of these individuals who have come illegally. Unbelievable. Our time is slipping away. If I can, Congressman, I'd like to switch topics on you. Monday, we're going to celebrate the 2-year anniversary of the Dobbs decision, which, of course, overturned Roe v. Wade. In fact, you were at the Supreme Court on that day. There's so much going on in this battle for life, from IVF issues to the life battle to all, and a lot of it's coming out in the election cycle that we're entering into. But does this anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade provide a reminder, really, of the differences between the parties and how the Democrats are running on abortion for this upcoming election?
Yeah, I think it really helps us to draw that stark line, Jody, between what the Republicans represent and what the Democrats represent. They represent the death. Okay, they represent death, and the Republicans have continued to embrace and support a culture of life. And this is where the abortion issue needs to be brought up. It needs to be very clear that we are against the killing of children. But that's why I was glad to see that you had invited Dr. Moeller onto Family Research Council just the other day and had a good conversation about IVF. My heart aches for couples that aren't able to conceive children. But the general public now is becoming much, much more aware of these 500 or so clinics that are conducting these procedures, and they have very, very little oversight whatsoever. They are fertilizing millions of embryos. And if you truly believe, like I do, that life begins at conception, then we have millions of children that are being conceived around the country, and only a small percentage of them are actually being brought to birth outside of the mother's womb. And so there's somewhere between 700,000 and who knows what of these fertilized embryos that are being discarded and or destroyed every single year, as compared to nearly 400,000 abortions that Planned Parenthood is conducting every single year. So the IVF industry is literally destroying at least double, based on just the limited information we're able to get, children every year, double the number of children every year that Planned Parenthood is. And so we as elected officials need to do what we can to educate the public, let them know what is going on, and try to get some kind of regulation put into that industry that I assure you is doing it for one reason, and that's the almighty dollar.
Yeah, billions and billions in that industry. And, like you said, there's just virtually no oversight whatsoever, no accountability. And many of these embryos end up being experiments as well. And it's unbelievable what is turning into right here. And that is now part of the abortion battle, and the push really coming from Democrats includes IVF. Congressman Matt Rosendale, always great to have you on the program. Thank you so much for taking time out of your beautiful time there in Montana to join us. We appreciate it.